I realize this looks a lot like it could devolve into mansplaining. But we do want to start off by affirming this is not mansplaining, or it might be explaining why men need to be here to other men, mostly among a group of women who know why the gender equality cause matters. Promundo as an organization works with the simple idea that gender equality needs men to be allies in ending violence, men's violence against women, to be doing our share of the care work and supporting the care economy, to be supporting women's leadership at all levels. We also believe, and this is why we're here in Iceland, that men benefit from gender equality. So that equation is gender equality needs men, and men need gender equality. We have heard several times today all those benefits of gender equality. Longer lifespan, better health, peace. What we often don't fill in that equation is that men benefit tremendously from those things, because men are usually overrepresented in all those harms, and often the harms that affect women. So we step on the stage as four men, as allies in this topic, not believing we have to explain, but believing that we're here as allies. I'm pleased, and it's an honor to be here in Iceland, because Iceland has stepped into the question of how. It is not, I think most in the gender equality field these days, most folks are not asking, do we need to include men? But really the question is how. Iceland came up with, I believe that was 2015, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs came up with the Barbershop as an approach to get men to talk about these issues. I loved it when I heard it because my grandfather was a barber. And I remember as a young child going into his barbershop, and I would go in there with kind of a mixture of I wanted to hang around the other men, but I was also slightly frightened of all the sharp instruments there that he might use if I didn't behave. So I think the barbershop is a very apt approach to saying, how do we get men to see our stake in this? I didn't mean for this to be 3 against 1, but we can move around here to step into this conversation. And I'm going to start with 3 men who are trying to do this. I'm going to start with you, Minister. What can we do to engage men as allies in this? Iceland, as I've said before, is appropriate to do this. Gender equality has been part of your national policies, part of your foreign policies. You've had a feminist or feminist-aligned foreign policy for a long time, and you created the Barbershop. So tell us about those and why you decided as a country to focus on this.
Well, yes, I think we've seen ourselves as possibly leaders in a sense, at least since we had the first elected president of the state, Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, in 1980. And I think it was only after the election that we realized that this was world news. And out of that, something started to happen. And slowly over time, I think the labor market pushed for more changes. Politics also, we had feminist party formed and represented in parliament. And we've seen a number of policy legislation being passed over time. One of them securing a non-transferable maternity leave. So when you ask what can we do to make sure that men participate, I think that was a brilliant move to say, okay, this part of the leave is non-transferable, so that you either lose it or you take it or use it. I think also the barbershop workshops have been tremendously successful, and thank you for collaborating with us in preparing those. We've held over 20. One was held only last week with over 100 military people and security officers participating at the OSCE. And I believe that creating an atmosphere or a platform for the dialogue and just discussing the matter and putting it at the center of the discussion with only men discussing it creates a different kind of an atmosphere which has proved very successful.
All right, thank you. A follow-up question, which is, you used to be Minister of Finance, and one of the things that Iceland has done is build gender equality into your financing, which is where I think it begins to be real and to affect policies of all kinds. Tell us about how gender equality matters for finance and how finance matters for gender equality.
Yeah, so the idea was we amended the law so that the organic budget law has now a mandatory clause since 2016 that you have to practice gender budgeting, which means that you have to take an equality look at how you collect public funding and how you spend money. And you have to ask yourself, okay, how is this going to affect the genders?
Yeah.
And I think it has helped a lot in making decisions. And a lot of what we need to do is just to make better decisions. And that goes back to what you said in your introduction. You know, we need both genders at the table so that decision making simply becomes more effective and more precise.
All right, thank you. Turn now to Ægir. You run one of the largest tech companies. How do you engage men? We know that bringing women as full equals into the tech industry around the world has been a challenge. Tell us about your efforts as a man to promote women's involvement in tech.
Yeah, the tech industry is obviously notorious for not being very inclusive.
Yep.
Globally, you have the percentage of women in the workforce is around 24%. My company, just around 30%. So it's an uphill battle, yep. And we are not nearly there at the moment. And the interesting, the sad truth actually is that when I started in this industry almost 15 years ago, the ratio was exactly the same, 28 to 30%. Yeah. So we haven't really made a lot of progress, to tell you the truth. But that's not saying that we haven't made a lot of effort. The results, they just haven't been there as of yet. So we have taken up a different approach. We have tried to influence girls in particular in entering into tech-related studies, which I think is, it's pretty obvious when the talent pool that you're fishing in is actually as skewed as the industry itself. It's only 30% of graduates from computer science is women. So we decided to engage girls in particular and entering into the elementary schools and trying to sort of get the industry all together to act to entice women into this industry. And so that's basically the change that we have made over the past few years. Also a lot of other stuff that we are doing, just over-representing women in all ads, just to try to create more role models. And we've took up, inspired by the gender budgeting, all data that we produce, employee data, is always considered in terms of gender as well. So there's a lot of internal work going on as well.
Okay. How have men in your, either your field or your organization reacted to this? Do you get pushback? How do you find them reacting to these efforts to say, we actually need fewer men here so that we have fewer women?
I think this sort of feels obvious and just it's basic. So you don't get any reaction really. It's a natural thing to do, I think. So I think it's positive.
All right, thank you for that. Andri, you work in the venture capital space. I don't know about here, but in many parts of the world, the venture capital space is known a bit for its bro culture, and also suffers from some of the same underrepresentation of women, in terms of, and a lot of comments you may hear that women don't take the risks the same way that men do, and they can't be in this space. We know those gender stereotypes that show up. What do you do in your company to push back on that and engage women?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Particularly in many parts of the world, and I think here in Iceland we're not nearly where we want to be, but relative, for example, Silicon Valley, where I used to live for several years, we are further ahead. So one of the first things we need to, I think Bjarni mentioned it actually, is decision making. And so the very first step is making sure that women are decision makers in the venture capital world. And I'm actually very proud of the Icelandic ecosystem here right now, because women here are making decisions. In my firm, we're a small venture capital firm. There are 2 female partners, and I'm the only male partner.
Okay.
There's also another venture capital firm that's only led by 3 women. So we definitely have that here, but we're still, just like Ægir, we are very much behind on the ratio of women becoming supported by the VC ecosystem. So one of the things we need to do in order to change that is to really purposefully create role models. Because I'm a fundamental believer of role models, and we have to break out of this catch-22 cycle where if we don't have great role models, you don't have young female entrepreneurs building companies, and then they don't become the same role models as well. So we really need to break out of that. I know this is anecdotal, but just by investing in great female-led companies like Alda, which gave me this T-shirt here, one of our portfolio companies. It's a female-led company that is on a mission to build the world-leading company and software company in terms of equality, inclusion, and diversity. Right. So just by that, of course, they have a long way to go, but we have to be very purposeful of lifting up these female entrepreneurs and make them a role model for the next generation.
All right. Can I ask you to open your blazer one more time? So folks can see that. Men of quality don't fear equality. Just want to make sure folks could see that. But I just want to say, please don't clap at that. My Brazilian mother-in-law said men should not be getting extra credit for what they should be doing anyway. Men should be doing this. We don't need the... But what I did want to ask is, in your workplace, do you wear that T-shirt?
I do.
And how do men react, or how do you think they may react to that?
I actually think we are lucky in the sense, in the country we live in, people react very positively to it.
Yeah.
So I think we, in that sense, even if we have, like I said, a long way to go, we are in a very, I think, supportive and equal environment in many regards, and especially, I think, in the sector that I am in.
All right, thanks. We're going to switch. I'm looking at our time here. We're going to switch now to the personal. One of the things that I think men of quality in this space have learned is that from feminist activism is that the personal is also political and the political is also personal. I'm going to turn this around a little bit. This might be the sharp instrument in the barbershop, which is to think about our personal stake in this. And I'm going to turn it back to you, and we'll just kind of go the opposite direction here, which is, what do we personally do for gender equality? And Andri, I'm going to ask you in terms of parental leave.
Yes.
Iceland has what is probably the most generous leave in the world, but we still know that men are not taking our full amount, whether here or anywhere else in the world. And just tell me how you lived that and how you try to show that to other men.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's fundamental as well. We need to show that example both in our professional and personal life. And for me, there was never really a question of taking a parental leave when my now five-year-old son was born. So I took, I think, almost five months of parental leave, split in 2 parts. And for me, that really matters for a few reasons. One is simply being a role model for my son. Because just as my parents were probably progressive, they were both entrepreneurs, and my father was taking just as much part in raising me and my siblings. So I think being a role model is important. Second is really just about bond. Having that early, very initial bond with my son is super important. It's even, and me and my wife, we try to split things fairly evenly. And it's almost even such that our son, that's now 5-year-old, is very demanding, and he's literally the boss of our home. If we don't split, like if I put him to sleep one night, and then if I want to do it the second night, he tells me, no, you did it yesterday, Mom should do it now. And the same with picking him up for kindergarten. So he's getting used to this being very, very much equal. And then the last piece is really about supporting my wife and my relationship with my wife. I mean, she is also she's a C-level executive at a listed company, so she's extremely ambitious and busy. And so this is also important, I think, for everyone to see that women can have an incredible career, and we as men support them both at home and in their private lives.
All right, thank you. I've loved that image of your, thank you. I love that image of your son as the little gender equality police going around. That is really where it becomes so important. We know internalizing that just carries forward. Thanks for that. Ægir, same question to you. How do you live this? Not only you're doing policies in your workplace, but how do you see yourself modeling for other men and boys what gender equality looks like?
Exactly what Andri was saying, trying to be a role model and trying to sort of walk the talk. But it is a struggle to juggle these things. My wife also has a demanding career, so it has always been a bit of a, well, who should be taking care of what and all that. So I think the breakthrough in that is, well, it always starts with a conversation, as we're trying to do here. And I think the breakthrough was, like 10 years ago or something like that, when sort of I realized that it wasn't a matter of, you know, who does what and trying to figure out sort of the equal share of everything that needs to be done in the home and all that, but it's also the mental load. It's the what is referred to as the third shift.
Yeah.
And sort of something clicked in my mind when I sort of realized that, okay, so she's carrying all that burden. I might be, you know, doing the laundry and cooking the meals and doing sort of all these tacts or the acts, but not taking part in that. And I think once we had a conversation on that, I think that sort of changed the whole dynamism in the way we shared responsibility.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Minister, we'll turn to you for the last word, but wanted to say I had a chance to meet some of your men staff earlier today. I won't mention names. You probably know who they are. And was asking them some of the things. What are they doing around engaging men in this issue within the ministry? They modeled something which I thought that men often don't do well, which is they didn't presume to know the answer to everything. Quite useful quality of men. They were willing to stop and ask for directions.
Yes.
So I just want to affirm that you're modeling something good in what they see in you as a leader. But I'm not going to let you off the hook on that.
All right.
How do you say you live this in your daily work, your daily life? How do you take gender equality and make it something you live?
Well, I think first I have to admit that being in my position for this long time it's been a struggle in terms of really practicing everything I preach. I just have to admit, you know, I work very long hours and it's been challenging for the family life. I just have to admit that. To me, it's very important, though, that at home that when we have the discussions with the children, I have 3 girls and 1 boy. In all, you know, from first was born 91, last 2011. Over the weekend, I was with my 12-year-old in a soccer tournament in Akureyri. I had to fly back. Typical for me as a leader, I was with my wife and my youngest on a soccer tournament. What do you know? We called for a cabinet meeting on a Sunday. I had to fly back, leave my wife there. Just a typical weekend for my family. So what I've found when we discuss this at home in a family conversation is that sometimes you have to be aware that what me and my generation think with regards to equality, gender equality, might not be exactly the same as the young generation is thinking. And I know you know about this example I mentioned. You know, when I was at a graduation event with my second youngest daughter, the head of the school was a woman. All of the teachers were women, every one of them. There were 13 awards given out. 12 of them went to the girls. And the one that went to the boy was for good behavior. And so, you know, that told me sometimes when I have a discussion with them on gender equality, they are not experiencing the same things that I did when I was their age.
Yeah.
I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Personally, as a politician, it has meant a lot to me to be an advocate of change in politics. I can name a few examples. During my chairmanship in my party, the party has appointed more women than before my time, combined all those years as ministers. 2 of the youngest female ministers of Icelandic politics have been appointed under or the party has appointed them whilst I've been chairman, and they are doing fantastically well. And I think they are participating, if I'm not wrong, at this event. So I've seen a lot of change, and I think we need to be constantly adjusting and noticing where we need to put our efforts. And the things we needed to talk about 10, 15 years ago, they don't apply in the same way today as they did then.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm mindful of time, and I want to thank all of you for being willing to share those stories. And I want to thank you all for having us here. We know this conversation is not obvious to everyone of men's roles here. I think Ashley left us on that note of we need to see these changes in manhood for all of us. Men have a stake. We want to come on the stage and be here with you, not instead of you, and marching alongside you. So thank you for your inspiration, and thanks for the invitation.